Hello everyone, kamusta po? My name is Marilag Dimatulak and I am the organizer of Azure User Group Manila. Welcome to another edition of our live online meetup. This is the fourth online meetup that we have held so far in 2020, and I'm so happy that you can join us. I know that for some of you who are in the Philippines right now, you're probably on holiday, and thank you for using your day off to learn something about Azure. So I'm very excited for today because we have a special guest, a Bryan Garcia. He's an Azure MVP for developer technologies, and he will be talking about the different Azure services that you can use to speed up your application. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about our organization. Azure User Group Manila is a community driven group focusing on Azure and focusing, of course, in the Philippines. And we are right now just hosting live events, but we also used to host some live events back in the Philippines before the quarantine. So we're hoping to get back to that at some point. But if you're interested in joining us or contributing or maybe volunteering as a speaker, please reach out to us through Twitter or Facebook or Meetup through Azure. At Azugmnl, or if you want to get in touch with me directly, just ping me on Twitter using @Marilat. So I'm just going to invite Bryan now here on stage.
Hi,
Hello
Marilag.
there.
Hi.
Hi.
Yep,
Thanks for joining us today.
no
So
problem.
I know you're working or you're supposed to
Yeah.
be at work, but thanks
Mm-hmm.
for taking time to do this for the community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
excited. How long have you been an MVP?
I've been an MVP for 4 years. Yeah, starting from 2017. Yeah.
Wow.
So been focusing on Xamarin, then now it's focusing on Azure. But yeah, still, you know, within .NET, within the Microsoft technology. So it's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. And I guess you're purely .NET developer. How long have you been .NET developer?
Actually, since college, I've started working on Microsoft technologies back in college when I was in second year. The first time I got a grip of .NET, specifically VB.NET. But from
Yeah.
that point, when I joined the Microsoft Student Partner Program, I got a chance to try out C Sharp, and I fell in love with it. And up until now, I'm still using it. But yeah, apart from that, I'm also doing I also touch open source as well, JavaScript frameworks and some other stuff. But yeah, mainly .NET. So,
Mhm. Cool. So are you full stack or are you more backend or mobile or everything?
well, I don't know. I think I would say I'm full stack, but there are different, ways they define full stack. Right now, it's been crazy, really. But yeah, I think I'm full stack. I've been working on web and mobile, and server side. Most of it on my current project, on my for my past projects as well. So I think I would say I'm full stack. Yeah.
Sounds exciting. But you mentioned VB.net, so I don't feel that
Hmm.
old anymore because at least someone else knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I talk about that to some of the younger developers, it's like, what? So back in
Yeah.
college, I think we did Fox Pro. So yeah,
Oh.
let's not get there.
Yeah.
so, so I'll give you the stage now
Hmm.
and have fun.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Marilag.
you.
So let me just share my screen. Oh, okay. So I'm not sure if it's sharing properly. I think I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I think let's start off with saying, hey guys, good evening. I'm Bryan Anthony Garcia. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Developer Technologies, and tonight I'm gonna talk about few services that will definitely speed up your applications, specifically Azure services. So at first, it might be kind of confusing on how to deal with these, but once we try it out, by doing a demo later on, I think you will be, it will be much easier for you guys to understand how we would make it work. So I've heard some people say that Azure is kind of hard to use. I would say that it's not really that hard to use. The Azure services are not difficult to use, uh, because quite frankly, uh, it has a great user experience wherein it allows you to do things easily, and with its documentations, definitely Azure is really easy to work with. I think the biggest problem with Azure, at least for me, is that you are you know you have this you have tons of options from Azure. It's hard for you to really choose which one you should actually apply for your application, for your solution. So that is, I think, the biggest problem for me. And basically choosing the service will always depend on the scenario, depend on uh, your needs for your application. So back then, when I started off with cloud, when I was setting up basic cloud architectures, wasn't I was really confused as well, because I didn't know which services to use, because I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, which it's not that far away from what I had before, but a lot better than what I used to. So yeah, I think it will solely base on the scenario and the needs for your application. Today, or tonight rather, we'll talk about specifically about the speed and the performance of the application. So we're not gonna be talking about the security, the scalability, and the pricing, but what we want to do is to focus on the actual the speed, to make it faster, to have a better performance, and select the services that we should use to get what we want, which is again speed and performance. So we have multiple options on speeding up our applications in Azure. The first one is Azure CDN. By the way, these services are not the only services that will speed up your application, but these are the services that I've used before, at least, and so I am kind of like comfortable of talking about them. So Azure CDN, or Content Delivery Network, um, this is something that you should use, wherein you can get your static files that you usually have in your application closer to your users. So that's Azure CDN. We have the Azure Cache for Redis. Mainly, it's an in-memory caching. Later on, we'll talk about it more. Oh, sorry. We also have the Azure Traffic Manager, which basically allows you to manage, obviously manage, or route your traffic to the most performant instances of your application, or maybe something different depending on the routing methods that you select. You also have the Azure Front Door, which is kind of same as the Traffic Manager, but uh, I will explain why it's different. But it's kind of like a wormhole for your users to get to your application. It makes your the what you call this the connection secure. It's kind of like an express entry point for your users to get into to the application. And the next two are Azure Load Balancer and the Azure Application Gateway, which is kind of like I wouldn't say exactly, definitely not exactly, but it's kind of like the Azure Traffic Manager and the Azure Front Door, respectively. But they're solely focusing on, or they cover a regional point of presence, compared to the Traffic Manager and the Azure Front Door, which covers a global point of presence. So let's talk about the last four Azure services that I've mentioned. But the first scenario, let's talk about the first scenario first. So the first scenario is, are your users, or are your app users globally distributed? So what do we mean by this? So let's just say that you have an app that is living, or that is deployed in Southeast Asia. And now you have users across the world. You have users from US, you have users from Europe, you have users from Australia. So that means your users are globally distributed, because they're all around the globe. So that's the first question. And then the next one is, that is the traffic between your user and your app HTTP based. So what do I mean by this? The easiest way to explain this is that is your app accessible through the web browser through a web browser. So something like maybe like a blog, maybe like your an online store app or a website, maybe like a social networking site. So those are accessible through the web browser. Also, even APIs can be accessed through web browsers because there's still they're still HTTP based. Can be done through HTTP requests. So that is if it's HTTP based, then that's the time you are gonna use the Azure front door. So again, Azure front door allows you to, I'm sorry, um, allows you to do these HTTP based routing, or uh, allows your users to connect to your app easily and a lot faster. Later on, we'll talk about it more. But if it's something else, if it's non HTTP based, maybe DNS based, maybe can be accessed through UDP protocol or whatever, you can use the Azure Traffic Manager. I'm not saying that you can do the things that you can do on the Azure front door with the Azure Traffic Manager. It will solely depend on the scenario or how your app is built. But yeah, later on, the demo that I'm going to show you is kind of like the same scenario for both of them. But uh, keep in mind that they have or they are they're still different from each other. They again, HTTP base is um, for Azure front door. If it's not, then you can go with the Azure Traffic Manager. Now for the regional ones, less than global, of course. If you have a regional point of presence, you can go with HTTP based. You have the application gateway, and non HTTP based, the load balancer, Azure load balancer. Now, to summarize them, basically, if you're looking for HTTP based load balancer, you have the application gateway for regional, you have the Azure front door for global. For the non HTTP based, we have the load balancer, and for load balancer for the regional globally, you have the Azure Traffic Manager. And let's talk about the Azure Traffic Manager first. So, Azure Traffic Manager allows you to distribute the traffic or route the traffic optimally and globally. So you have a global point of presence. It is a DNS-based traffic, and you have different routing methods. So this is I think the best one of them, because you can always route your, or at least Traffic Manager can route your users to the most performant instances of your app, or the most performant instance for your user. But you can always do something else. You have different routing methods which are pretty interesting actually, but some of them doesn't make sense. But I will talk about the ones that at least make sense for me. And additionally, it's easy to set up. So let's talk about the routing methods that I was talking about earlier. So for Azure Traffic Manager, you can manage the traffic or route the traffic depending on the method that you select. You can choose performance, you can choose weighted, geographic, and priority. You actually have two more, which I'm not really going to discuss a lot. Anyway, let's talk about the performance first. So the performance allows your user to be routed to the most performant, obviously the most performant instance. So let's just say that you have an app and it has an instance here in Southeast Asia, and you have one in Europe, an instance of your app in Europe, and you have one as well in Central America, Central US. So if your user is from, let's just say, Philippines, of course the most performant instance will be the Southeast Asia instance. And if your user is living in maybe in Greenland, maybe or maybe in London, obviously the most performant for him, for that user, is the Europe instance. And of course, for US, same thing for US instance. So that is the performance routing method for you, which is obviously what makes sense the most. But we still have some other routing methods. So you have the weighted routing method, which allows you to set, like for example, if you have three instances, you can set the first instance to 70% of the weight, the second one is 20%, and the third one is 10%. That means that the traffic will be distributed to those three, but they can only carry so much weight. Again, it depends on how much you give them. If you give them 70%, they will carry 70% of the traffic. If you give them 20%, only 20% of the traffic, 10%, 10% of the traffic. So that is basically it. And the thing with this is that it's random. So the Azure Traffic Manager pushes the traffic randomly. But until it gets to the 10% to the 20%, that's the time it will route it on the only on the 70%. And the next one is geographical, which is kind of like the same as the performance one, but the difference is that you're fully customizing it. So you can do the same thing as what the performance does, but if you do that, why not just go with the performance, right? You can base it on the performance, but you can set it up as if, let's just say that you have two instances. Your first instance is in Central US. The next one is in the Southeast Asia. Now, what you want to do is anyone or every user that is uh, living in Asia should go to the Southeast Asia instance. And everyone living in Europe, in Central US, in Africa, everyone else basically would go to the Central US. But the thing is, you can actually do it the other way around, which would make no sense. But you can say that everyone from Asia should connect or should be routed to the Central US instance, and the Central or everyone else should be routed to the Southeast Asia instance, which would make no sense. But that is what geographical can do for you. It's not gonna base on the performance, but instead it's gonna base on what you tell it to do, or or where you or where you if your users are in on a specific location, we can just basically tell the Azure Traffic Manager to route them to this specific instance, not even basing in the performance. And the next one is priority. Priority is based on you know just setting the priorities of each instance. So if you have three instances, you set the priority of the first one to one, then the next one two, and the next one is three. So basically, if the first instance goes down, the next priority or the traffic will be routed to the next priority, which is the second one. If the first priority or yeah the first instance, which is the first priority, goes up again, the traffic will go through that one through that instance again. And yeah, those are I think the most the routing methods that makes most sense. The other two, well, I think the subnet makes sense as well, wherein you can just say that everyone with this subnet should go to this instance, and this subnet will go to this instance, something like that. So you can do that as well. But now we're only going to talk about the Azure Traffic Managers, call this geographical routing method. I just want to show you how easy it is to customize the Azure Traffic Manager. And the thing about this is that you know the performance is it's just gonna be there. It's just gonna have to set it to performance, and you don't have to do anything else. Just have to add the instances. But what we only do is play around a bit with the Azure Traffic Manager. So I'm gonna go to my Azure portal, and I have already set up the instances of my application. So I have this thing called Speed Up Southeast Asia, Speed Up C. It's living in Southeast Asia. This one is Speed Up Central US, living in Central US, obviously. And now if you access them, it basically has this text, hello Southeast Asia, LOC for the Southeast Asia instance. And the other instance is the hello Central US, which lives in Central US. So again, I didn't need to, you know, to set the whole website up with all of the design, etc. I just really want to show you how easy it is to route your users depending on, you know, what how we want it to be, how we want it to be routed. Again, this time geographically, so we're gonna set it up. So now we've set up these two app services. You can now start up by creating the traffic. Oh, sorry. You can now start up by setting up the app service, or rather the traffic manager. So you can start off by opening up the traffic manager profiles, or maybe you can just search for traffic manager and you can create a new one. Let's just create a new one by clicking add. So right here, as you can see, it's just asking us for some details here. You should give a name. Basically, this is going to be used for how do you say this, like your domain. Sorry, someone's messaging me. But let's just finish this off first. Okay. Again, we can just give it a name for the domain. Just give it Azugmnl, or Azure User Group Manila 133. And as you can see right here, you can set the routing method. So you can set it to maybe performance based, weighted, priority, or geographic. And what we want to do is geographic. So let's just click that. And then subscription, you can choose whatever subscription you have. And the resource group, for me, I'm just going to put it in the demo RG. And you can just press create. But this takes a while, so I already have one ready for you, which is this one right here, the speed up demo PH. And so this one is basically what we'll get once if we press create, except with these endpoints. So these endpoints are the ones that I've set up. If you go to configuration, you will see the routing methods that we have. It's going to take a while because of my internet connection. There we go. So again, you can change it anytime you like. Though if you come from maybe performance, weighted, or priority, and you try to change it to geographic, you might have to remove the endpoints first. Endpoints, I'm going to talk about it now. So let's just leave it at that. Let's just go to endpoints. So endpoints are basically your instances, the instances of your application. So we have two instances. We have the Central US instance and the Southeast Asia instance, just like I've shown you earlier. And you can add a few more if you have more instances. And by clicking add, you can just add an endpoint. Look for the type. So you have external, if you have external endpoints, if you have nested endpoints, you can choose that. But right now, all my endpoints are within Azure. So you can just select that one. You can give it a name. At the moment, we have Central US and Southeast Asia. I'm not going to add a new one, but I'm just going to show you how it would go if ever you have a Europe instance. You can just type in Europe and a target resource, maybe app service. Well, we have app services, so you can just select that. And specifically the name of the resource. So at the moment, we've added the Central US already and the Southeast Asia, but I can, let's just say that, for example, this is Europe. But if we select this, it would say that it's already existing, which is okay. But now this is kind of like routing method specific, because we have the geographical routing method selected. We are now being requested to select the geo mapping for this specific instance. Now, if this is a Europe instance, that means that we would only like the users from the region of Europe to be able to access this instance, meaning the traffic manager should route everyone from Europe or any users in Europe to this specific resource. Let's just say we have the Europe resource or Europe instance. Then that would be the ideal way of doing it. And you can actually do it a little bit granular. You can choose the country, maybe Iceland. You can add a few more, maybe specifically in Sweden. So with this, you're saying that if your user is coming from Iceland and Sweden, then it should be navigated or routed to this specific resource. So we can just add this, but since we already have it, let's not add it. Instead, let's go through each of these, the Central US and the Southeast Asia. Here we go. Let's click this one. And as you can see, we are using the resource or the instance of the Central US one. And the geo mapping is everyone around North America, or every users in North America, Central America, and Caribbean would be routed into this instance. And that would be the same with the Southeast Asia. This one would be routed, or everyone in Asia would be routed in this instance. So now I can just go to the overview and access the link, the domain. Just clicking this, and since I'm in the Philippines, which is part of Asia, obviously, I am navigated to the Southeast Asia instance. Now, to test out the Central America, let's try out and open up a proxy site, which I can easily just look for a US server right here and just paste the link. And since this user, let's just say, is in US, he will be navigated to the Central US instance. As easy as that. So again, this is the geographical routing method, but you can always choose the other ones. I would say choosing the performance routing method would be the ideal one. What we've done is kind of like what would the performance would do, but I just really want to show you that it can be customized with the help of the geographical routing method. But yeah, that's one great thing that to demo as well. So yeah, with the help of the traffic manager, I was able, or yeah, as the app owner, I was able to route my users to the instance that they needed to be routed. If I'm from US, I should be routed to the US instance or Central US instance for a lot faster, a better performing application, and obviously, again, a lot faster. So yeah, that's the traffic manager for you. The next one is the Azure front door. So Azure front door has a global point of presence. It's basically like a wormhole for your user to your application. Again, it's a globally secured endpoint, or sorry, entry point. It's not just focusing on the speed and the performance, but it also allows your application to be secured with the help of the WAF, or the web application firewall. Of course, not only the front door has it, even the application gateway has it, and some other services. But yeah, also makes your request a lot faster overall. So I will show it to you later on as well. But let me talk about the what I mean when I said that it has a globally secured entry points. So let's just say that you have a website deployed in Southeast Asia, and it's being accessed across the world. And if this is the case, if they try to access your application, it would take a while. It would be it would seem slow for these users whenever they access your websites, because they are from far away and they're trying to access the website in Southeast Asia. So definitely would perform worse than what we are experiencing if we are living if the users are living in Southeast Asia. So with the help of the Azure front door, it can set up these point of presence, and it will allow your users to connect or to go through these through these Azure front door what you call this instances, and act like, again, like a wormhole for them to access your application in a much faster way, much secure way, and obviously much performant way. So this is an example when I said that it makes your requests a lot faster. So this is running on a single PC that is it is running actually, I think it's in the US, and they're trying to access two different well, same website, but this one is using just the app service, and this one is using um, Azure front door on top of that app service, on top of this app service. So basically, they're trying to access the same website, or trying to retrieve the file, this 100k.gif file on the website. But this one is a lot faster, as you can see, than this one, because this one is using the Azure front door. So overall, it makes your request a lot faster, even though they're just in the same location. Azure front door will always make it faster for you. So let's do a quick demo as well for the Azure front door. So let's go back to the demo. We're gonna use the same thing. We're gonna use this Hello Southeast Asia and Hello Central US, but instead of setting up the Azure Traffic Manager profile, we will be setting up the Azure front door. So to create an Azure front door, you can just look for a front door, or maybe click this button right here. Unless you haven't accessed it recently, you should have to search. You should search it instead. You can just press add, and then a few seconds maybe. Takes a while because of my internet connection. There we go. So you can just look for a resource group, and then proceed to the next configuration, which this is basically your front door designer. So this is where you would, set up the domain, set up your backend pools, and intertwine them with the help of the routing rules. So let's start off with setting up the domain. So you can create multiple domains, by the way, but let's just create a single one, Azugmnl. And session affinity, let's just leave it at that. We're not gonna focus on it. Don't want to waste a lot of time. So, but you can definitely turn it on, turn it off. That basically is what you call this. You have a sticky session kind of thing. Well, it is a sticky session, and you also can what you call this, enable the WAF, but you have to set up a policy for that, which we're not going to do right now. So the next one is to set up the backend pools. So we can just give it a name of Azugmnl pool, and within the backends, we can add few backends. You can add by clicking the add a backend, and this is where we would add our application instances. We can add a new app service from the Visual Studio Enterprise, and we can just select the Central US, leave everything as it is, and then maybe this priority and the weight is something that might look familiar because we've already seen this on the Azure Traffic Manager as well. But these are basically, kind of like saying that you can also do priorities, but also the weight distribution. But let's just leave it at that. And we can disable this to basically say make it active or inactive. Let's just leave it at that. You can just add this, and another one is the other instance, which is the Southeast Asia. And you may notice that we're not setting up anything like we did on the geographical routing method that we did in the Azure Traffic Manager, because this time front door is solely focusing on the most performant for the user. So you can just add this as well, and we'll leave everything as it is. And now with this one, we can now link the domain and the backend, or the backend pool. So you can just say Azug Manila route, or sorry, rule, and accepted protocols. Let's just leave it as HTTP and HTTPS. And the domain is already selected because there's only one domain created. So yeah, you don't have to change anything, and the rest is just fine. And we can just add this, and we can now review and create, but we're not gonna do that because it takes a while too. I had an issue yesterday wherein it took me 10 minutes for it to load, and I thought it was not working properly, and apparently it takes a while. It just takes a while. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna access the domain that we had earlier, or that we saw earlier, which is this one. Try to access this, and there we go. Again, this will totally based on the performance. So it's routing me to the Southeast Asia, and if we do the same thing again with the proxy site, we have this. Even Europe would navigate us or route us to the this central US because it's closer than Asia. And yeah, if we try this out, obviously it will be navigated to central US. And even if we change it to EU, since it's closer, as EU is closer to central US than Southeast Asia, it will navigate us to the central US instance. There we go. And so yeah, that is Azure Front Door for you. Again, really easy to set up, no sweat, and as quick as that, we were able to route our users in the right instance for better performance, or the best performance rather, for them. So the next one, let's proceed to the next scenario. So the next scenario is more of a does your app have data used often but change rarely? Now in this scenario, we have two different types of data: the data that changes often and the data that changes little. Let's discuss the data that changes often first. So the data that changes often are the data that, let's just say, being changed daily, hourly, minutely, or even every second. So as an example of this would be like a transaction, maybe like a message, like a messaging app, maybe like comments in a post. So this can change minutely or hourly. Maybe in a minute it will change, or maybe 10 messages will be sent in a minute. Depends on how frequently you would send messages. But yeah, the thing is, the data changes a lot in a single hour. So this is what we call the data changes often. Now the data that changes little are the data that is like this one, the country. So countries, of course, we're not, how do I say this? There are no countries for the past few months that are added. I think at least. So the countries, the country names will be the same, maybe in a year, maybe in a few years. Maybe they might be adding a new country, and maybe for the next month. But it is something that changes rarely. I'm pretty sure that we won't have new countries within the next few hours. So this is definitely a data that changes little. Next one is something that usual application would have. So this is a data that is being retrieved whenever you try to log in, or should be retrieved when a user tries to log in. It is the user details, or the basically the user profile. So ideally, this would only be retrieved at the very first, or the login of the user, when the user logs in. And this wouldn't change unless the user changed it, unless the user updates something about it. But basically, all I'm saying is that this data changes rarely, unless the user changes it. But this is a data that might be displayed on some pages. Maybe you want to put the name at the top, at the header. So yeah, this data is used a lot, but changes very little, very rarely. And yeah, so this is basically the data that changes often and the data that changes little. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use whatever I'm gonna talk about the next slide on the on the first type of data, the data that changes often. It depends on the scenario, it depends on how you want to architect your application. But I would say that the data that changes little should always be cached. So I'm talking about caching. So these data right here, the country names, or yeah, the country list, and the user details, there's the data that you should always cache. While the data that changes often might be, you might cache it, of course, but it depends on how you would do it. But yeah, again, definitely data that changes little should be cached always. And yeah, again, Azure Cache for Redis is the Azure offering for the in-memory cache. So it makes your application a lot faster because it doesn't have to retrieve the data from the database all the time. It has georeplication, data persistence, and there are other advanced features. So if you want to store data um, in your application, why not use caching? Caching is one of the best ways to do it, and Azure Cache for Redis is definitely want to go want to go with, basically. And the third scenario, I'm not going to do a demo of this. It takes a while to demo. So I'm just going to proceed to the third scenario, which is the final scenario, which is does your data, or does your app rather, does your app have videos, audios, or images, static files? So if your application is something like this, maybe a real estate application, or yeah, real estate website that has images of these real estates, and for each of these, when you open them up, they have this slideshow of images that shows the entirety of the house. You might also have a video that shows the whole the house itself within. So you might have a lot of static files in there. And the other one is maybe the blog, or maybe a blog. A blog post might have a lot of photos explaining each step, and you have you have a lot of blog posts that has these images. So definitely it will be image intensive. So both of these, or these types of websites of applications, tries to retrieve a lot of static files, which would not shock you, but it will take a lot of a lot of time for it to load. The data coming from your website to your user's machine definitely would take a lot of time if you have tons of images. So it is because location matters when it comes to traveling data. You might ask why. So let's talk about how your users are connecting to your app. Let's just say that your app is in the Southeast Asia, and it has a lot of images and videos. And your users are across the world. You have users in Greenland, in Europe, in South America, and in Southeast Asia. So basically, the latency, which is the time spent for your data to travel into your user would be different. It would be a lot faster for the ones who are around Southeast Asia. It would be a lot slower if your users are from Europe and South America. For this one, in Europe, you have 181 ms. For South America, you have 218 ms. That means they're much slower than, relatively slower than the, what you call this, than the Southeast Asian user. But if you think about it, 181 ms is still fast. I mean, not relatively with the Southeast Asia, but you might think that 181 ms is still fast. Well, yes, it would sound fast, but realistic in a more realistic call it situation, it adds up. Latency adds up. So let's just say that you have 20 images in that single web page. That means you have 20 requests, and let's just say that all of those requests has have a latency of 181 ms. That means you have to compute it, and you will get to the point that you have 3.6 seconds for that whole page to load. And some of my clients would think that it is really slow, and I agree, it is really slow. And this is, again, we're talking about 181 ms. There are some others who have slower, lower latency, or rather higher latency. So yeah, all I'm saying is that location matters when trying to retrieve data from the actual server. So the thing about this is that we have this thing called Azure CDN, and we can just set up this CDN. It can just set up this CDN point of presence, and with this, our users can just retrieve these static files from these point of presence, and then it's just gonna be really quick for them whenever they try to retrieve these static files with the help of the Azure CDN. So let's just do a quick demo instead. So let's go to my demo. It's this one. This time I'm gonna have a different demo. This is my app. This is a website that I have already deployed in the Azure website, or app, in an app service, by the way. And this is, if I go back to my, here, this is the app, by the way. And it is living, or the location is in Central US. It lives in the Central US. This instance is in Central US. So it takes a while to load. Sorry. Yeah, it is in Central US. Oh. So if I try to load this, definitely it will be slow. If I check the network and try to refresh this, the images that we have here, as you can see, are stored in the within the website as well. So we have images, within the when we deploy this, it's when we deploy the website, it's the images are along with it. So I try to refresh this. As you may see, this time it's a lot faster, but that's just, maybe it's the cache. Let's just try to yeah, it's a lot faster. It's still fast, but as you may notice that there is a better way, because this is in Central US. Definitely, it would be a lot faster if this website is living around Asia. So what we want to do now is to set up an Azure CDN. So to do that, we have to first push our images, the images that we have in our website, into an Azure storage. And I've already done that because I really don't want to waste a lot of time. So let me just look for it. This one right here. So I already have the images in my blob container. Right here. This one, let's try to access this one just to show you that it is the same image. There we go. So we're going to access these images and display it into our website instead of adding images into our file system and then loading it into our website. You don't want that because if it lives on a farther location, it might load for them real slow. And so right after that, if we have this storage now, we can just go up and set up a CDN profile. CDN profile is basically what we need to set up the whole, those CDN point of presence. And we don't actually have to set up those point of presence. It will automatically do it for us. So if I press add, there we go. You can just give it a name, Azugmnl CDN. Just use a resource group, demo RG. You can choose a pricing tier. Let's just use the standard Microsoft and click the create a new CDN endpoint now. You can create it later, but we can create it now as well. We can just set up this endpoint, which we will be accessing later on for our application, for it to be loaded. Or basically, this is the domain that we'll be accessing for us to load the data into our website, or maybe try to load it into the browser. You can just give it an AZUG Manila. If it's already existing, we can add numbers. This is by the way, universal endpoint. So if you have the same one, you might have to change it to something else. If you have, same with the others. So you can choose an origin type. Let's just select the storage because we have an Azure storage, and we can choose the storage account name. We are gonna use this because this is the one that we created, the Azure Speed Up Storage. And we can create this, but we're not gonna create that because it takes a while as well. So I already have one here. So this one, once it loads, hopefully, we can just access the URL or the URL of this one, the endpoint. By clicking this, I can go to the this host name and look for images, and I can retrieve it. And with this, it already is trying to retrieve these images, these static files, from an Azure CDN POP. So this one is definitely closer to me than the one that is displayed here. So what I want to do now is I actually have the code for this. So I'm just going to do a quick deployment. Let's do it by, of course, changing this because we're trying again to retrieve the image from the file system. Instead, we're just going to use this, the CDN demo. It's going to work out fine. Here we go. Let's fix this. I think it's right. It's right. It is right. Yep. And you can just copy this, I think. 2, 3. Let's run it. Make sure that it's working. Oopsie. Where is it? Just wait for it to run. Here we go. Or is it? Not yet. Takes a while, but you don't have that much time. So instead, what I want to do now is just deploy this in the app service. that we currently have. Oops. Just put them back. I don't know why I removed them. Here we go. Hmm. Okay, that's weird. You logged me out. Let me just log in again. There we go. So what I want to do is to deploy it in the same Azure instance or app service instance. So I just want to click this deploy and then click deploy, and this will take a while, by the way. Um, so I guess while this is being deployed, let's just discuss the or summarize the things that we discussed earlier. So in summary, we have different ways of speeding up our application in Azure. And we have the load balancer, the application gateway, the front door, the traffic manager, CDN, and the Redis cache. And they're being used depending on the scenario. So the first scenario is offloading of traffic from your application, meaning instead of your application loading them, maybe there's something else that will handle it for your application. And front door, CDN, and the Redis cache is basically the solution for that. By the way, the Azure front door, the reason why it's here is that front door also has CDN, by the way, but we didn't demo it today because we had a separate demo for the CDN. Bringing data closer to your users is definitely the same. So again, bringing them closer with with the help of the CDN, with the front door CDN and Redis cache, storing the data in memory. Now, how about bringing the application closer to your users? Now we have this four right here: the load balancer, the application gateway, the front door, and the traffic manager. Again, front door allows you to have this wormhole, kind of like a wormhole entry point for your users to your application. Traffic manager, we have this, kind of like it is a routing manager that allows us to route our users to the best or the most performant instances of your application. And lastly, providing in-memory cache or access date to your data, definitely Redis cache. So those are the basically some of the scenarios as well that you might think of, but again, it will depend on you on how you would like to implement them. You can actually mix and match. Definitely, I would recommend doing that. You want to use front door on some parts of your page, and then some parts of it maybe you use traffic manager maybe for your back end. Of course, add CDN as well and implement Redis cache. That would be amazing to, of course, make your application as fast as it can be. So those are kind of like a basic stuff that you should understand to to make your website or your applications a lot faster. But we have some other scenarios as well that might be a lot complicated than what we've discussed. This right here is something that was given to me by my friend. This has this has been mixed and matched. It has some of the components or scenarios that we discussed earlier, but mainly this is discussing a more complicated scenario. You can again mix and match them, adding front door along with the application gateway, traffic manager along with the load balancer, yada yada. So yeah, this is something that you can do as well. So before we proceed to this, let's just see what happened. I think it's already deployed, so let's just reload this page. And there we go. We have the images already in here. I'm not sure why the network didn't show it. Where is it? Let's try again. So as you may see, unfortunately, I closed the other one. Did I? Oh, sorry. Um, uh, Kind of did. This one we won't be able to see the network, I think. Yeah. But earlier, I think it's more than 600 ms per image. But this time, we're loading it as low as 290 ms. And it can be lower, again, depending on the location, depending on how quick your internet is. And you may see that it is parallel, is being loaded parallel. So it's not sequential like what happened here. It's kind of like a sequence. Uh, this is being loaded on parallel, and they were loaded really quick. Again, we are in the Philippines, and this website is in central US. But with the help of the CDN, we were able to retrieve the data or retrieve the static files quickly with the help of it, with the help of its point of presence. So yeah, I think that's gonna be it. If you have questions, or if you want to take a look at some of the Azure services, you can check this link out. If you want to reach out to me, you can go to Twitter, Mind of AI. You can send me tweets, messages regarding some of your questions. But if you have questions as well, maybe on YouTube on the StreamYard, you can ask me. So yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you guys for listening. Um, yeah.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Hey,
That was just a
hey, Maria.
really excellent session. Lots of
Thank you.
demos. I love that. Let's
Thank you.
see if we get any comments or questions from the stream.
Mhm.
We don't have any at the
I
moment.
don't. I
Well,
don't
I
think
have like
we do.
hundreds of questions, so if nobody asks questions, I would just do it myself. Let's spend like a
Yeah.
couple of minutes maybe talking about
Oh,
what
sure.
you
No
presented.
problem.
So,
Okay.
yeah, it's really for me is it's really really helpful to
Mm-hmm.
see this in this way, get a view of all the services that we can use to improve the application, the speed of our application, the performance, and all these things. And you can see there's a lot of things to choose from, lots of services. um, I guess the most important is that as a developer, you just have this awareness that you do
Mm,
have to improve your application all the time, right? To you, what kind
definitely.
of tools do you normally use to sort of measure your performance
I'm
when you're
sorry.
building
Uh,
application?
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
It kind of crackled on the part where you said a specific or the keyword. I
Question.
didn't hear the
All right.
keyword. Yeah.
What do you have any tools that you
Oh,
use so
tools.
that you
Okay.
can measure the performance when you're doing optimization?
Well, definitely you can use you have the tools on your Azure as well. Well, if we're talking specifically about Azure, you definitely have a lot that we can use with the Azure diagnostics, and what else? The Azure Monitor. You can also try that out, and definitely application insights is where you would definitely see the issues when it comes to trying if someone tries to load your data or your website, do some requests. You definitely would see the metrics in there. That would be really helpful to know that you're having issues on this part of your website or this part of your application. But on some other parts of your application, maybe the front end, depends on which platform you're using.
Mhm.
So yep, I
That's
think yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah, so you mentioned, thank you. That's really great. You mentioned a lot of different sort of layers when you're trying to optimize your application. So you have the data, you have application, you
Mhm.
have all the routing and the networking. If let's say you don't have all the resources to spin up these services,
Mhm.
what would you do first? Would you do caching first or front door first? Or so what's
Hmm.
kind of like the hierarchy of priorities?
I think it would depend on, again, it will also always depend on what your app really does.
Mm,
how what's really kind of like your app's priority. I would say that if you have tons of images, if it's just like a blog when it has a lot of things that it's being displayed, I would say use CDN. But in general, if you have, because if you're talking about, saving up for or trying not to spend a lot, setting up new application instances would definitely cost more, and that is something that you might not want to do. But if you want to try that, if you have the money to do that, then maybe I would really say that Azure Front Door or Azure Traffic Manager is something that I would really suggest for someone to use. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes. Speaking of kind of saving up and costing, so if you're just a beginner in Azure, for example, so you just started
Mm,
learning Azure, and it's probably not something that your company is using. What is your
mm,
general advice to developers or IT practitioners who wants to get started and learn more without really spending so much? How did
mhm.
you learn all these things?
Well, I'll be honest. It was, of course, I was able to access Azure because of my company. From Yes, my previous company, and not only that, I was again part of the program called Microsoft Student Partner. So we had the privilege to to access these Azure services with the help of the free Azure accounts. But yeah, since I mentioned it already, the thing with Azure is that they allow you to try these things out um, without spending anything. As long as you have, register for an account, they will give you the free credit, so you can start off with, with these. So I would say that I really didn't start off with doing any infrastructure networking when I started off with Azure. I really didn't have that much knowledge, but when I had the chance to touch the Azure, and because of these documentations that they have, I was able to learn easily. And as mentioned earlier, it's really easy to learn Azure because of the tons of documentations and the user experience that they provide you. It's really easy to use, I would say. Hmm. Yeah.
I quite agree, and that's also the message that we want to send out to our community members, right? That we're doing this all the time because we really want to show you that it's not hard to learn these things. Maybe in the beginning it looks intimidating because it's all
Yeah.
new and probably we don't have all the experience. Also, just the concept behind setting up all this. Network layers and optimization services, but just give it a
Mhm.
try, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure like in no time you will learn all these things if you just
Yeah.
spend your holidays like now
Yeah.
watching videos like
Right.
this,
And
right?
yeah, I agree about that. Concepts is the one that I was really afraid of, but dealing with Azure services is not really that bad. It's just that it's kind of like scary at first, but once you get a grip of it, it's really gonna be easy for you. Yep. Yeah.
Yes. We didn't get any more. Do last 10 seconds for those of you still want to post their questions. Otherwise, this stream is recorded, so it's going to be available on YouTube, and you can keep watching it and share it to your colleagues and to your friends. And if they do have questions, Brian gave out his contact. You can reach him on Twitter. Mind of AI, that's a very interesting handle.
Yeah.
Mine is just very boring. It's just my name at Maryland. But if you have any questions for us, also for the community, and also Brian, he owns the Xamarin
Oh yeah, we
user
have we have
group.
this Xamarin user group. It's called MonPH, Mobile.NET Developers Philippines, and we're planning. Actually, I just came back from a two month break, and I'm planning to set up a lot of events, and we along with my co-leads, and we're really excited for for the comeback.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you wanna reach out to us community organizers, also we have the Philippine.net user group, and I think there's also Azure Philippines. There's a lot of communities out there, so don't be scared and reach out to us, and then we'll probably help you with your learning process
Yep,
on Azure.
that's true.
Thank
Yep.
you very much, Brian,
All right.
and enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy your weekend. Is
You
it
too,
weekend for you?
Marilag. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
guys for listening. Thank you guys. Thank you, Marilag, for inviting me. All right.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
Bye.